Namaste is a Sanskrit word similar to yasu in Greek, aloha in Hawaiian, and ciao in Italian, shalom in Hebrew, meaning both hello and goodbye. Connotatively, however, it means my inner peace meets, greets, and salutes your inner light. To the light of the sunrise, by segue, we now invite you to follow or join us in our second class, which we're going to call the second class. Manuel, for the sunrise version, is laying supine in corpse pose, meditating, listening to the music, perhaps some aromatherapy in the room, and I'm going to invite him as an instructor walking around the room with this new technique, or different from class number 1, verbally cueing. In the first class, we sort of did it together. You had someone visual you could follow. Now, as our book mentions, great instructors are able to walk around and command a class and cue and correct and coach and counsel verbally as well, to be impeccable in your cueing. I'm going to invite you, Manuel, to wiggle your fingers and toes, and you could substitute Manuel for all your class students' names, should you know them, and I hope you do in time. And then let's add some movement to the ankles. And the corollary and friends of the ankles, above the hips, the wrists. So we move fingers and wrists. And then let's add movement to the knees. And the friends of the knees above the hips, the elbows. And let's add some elbow flexion as well. Wonderful. And then above the knees, we have the hips. So we move side to side on the hips. And then let's add their friends above the hips, the shoulders, some shoulder shrugs on the floor. And then let's take the hands up into the air and reach and touch the floor behind you while you're still moving the lower body a little bit, and stretch and maybe yawn side to side, a little lateral flexion like you just woke up from a siesta in Spain. Without any sangria, of course. And now I'm going to invite you to turn and lay onto your left side so you can face me into a little ball, sort of almost like a child pose on your side. Push back and up now, and let's turn cross-legged, facing our friends who are watching. And let's take a few preparation breaths here. As we get ready for our movement, I'm going to invite you to put your hands forward and sit back into a kneeling position. Now, the reason we're going to start in hero now, grab your glutes, automatically separate those from the ischial tuberosity, is to give you a whole other warm-up different from the class workout number 1 that we did. While we say that sun salutations are traditional ways we begin our hatha yoga, they don't always have to include standing. In fact, for the first 6 months that I teach hatha yoga or facilitate it to people who haven't taken it before, I sort of explore the floor just to emulate life. In life, we weren't born able to walk before we're able to crawl and walk on our hands and knees and all fours, correct? So this is just another way to use all of our sunrise morning series of hatha yoga into the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of using similar postures of the sun salutation, but it's traditionally floor-based. So from here, my friends, in hero pose, let's exhale into child, taking your hands behind you. As you keep the spine extended, notice how we had that great active spinal extension, and then seal your forehead to the floor and take a few breaths there. If that's appropriate for you now, put your hands on the floor by your ears right here and push yourself up back into hero. And as your body allows, here's the invitation. Make a dance with your prana. Exhale and go down into child from a leaning hip extension, spinal extension into flexion. Then put your hands down in front of you and push yourself up. A few more times, Manuel. So we're inhaling, making a little mini veneer, a little vinyasa of hero and child, just to show you another way to put together our yoga postures or asana. Hero and child, we'll do it one more time, and then we're going to get ready. After hero and child, this time we'll push ourselves up and get ready for the four-legged or four-limbed stick. Inhaling up, the knees go back behind you. Keeping the hips in flexion, we're going to lower down to knees, chest, chin, the four-limbed stick. So we have the progression or the regression, because it's the first time Manuel's trying this, in the regression or the letter A. The knees, chest, and chin, the hips up. How could I tell if he's doing it correctly? I could take a foam roller right from one side to the other, and it goes all the way to the other side. Let's inhale up into plank and make a little vinyasa of plank and four-limb stick. This time, let's hover down instead of knees, chest, and chin. Four-limb stick. This time, nothing touches the floor, and inhaling up when you're coming up. And then exhaling on the way down. If that breathing technique doesn't feel great for you, then you do what does for you. Perhaps you exhale on the way up, concentric push-up, triceps, for example, for those fitness cuers who can relate to that, and inhale on the way down. Let's try 26 more, and I'll count it out for you. Nice to make him smile and laugh. Last one, bring the knees down to the floor and hold your plank. I think laughing is integral in Hatha Yoga. It's not something to be serious about, right, Manuel? We've got to lighten up when we practice Hatha Yoga. I've always been taught that the reason that angels can fly is because they take themselves so lightly. So from our plank pose, let's lower the hips and look at the sky. And now we have our upward facing dog, just as we do in our traditional sun salutation from class number 1. And now we exhale down into a downward facing dog, which we'll try puppy now because it's still the first phase of our floor. Exploring the floor, salute or seal the forehead to the floor. Manuel, let's make a vinyasa of that. Inhale to upward facing dog. Exhale into the little downward facing dog, which we'll still call puppy, so we understand the difference of feet and knees stay on the floor. You can invite your class then to try that a few times while you're walking around. You establish a short, simple, safe pattern, and then you can leave your space in the front center of the room and command control. The best instructors are cueing, commanding instructors when you control everyone's mat by being off of yours. Inhaling. Now let's do a full downward facing dog. Exhale into a downward facing dog. Let's inhale one more time into an upward facing dog. Knees stay off of the floor. You can keep the feet this position or change the ankle position each time. You don't have to. Exhale into a downward facing dog. This time stay here and inhale, one leg comes up. And then exhale down into the full downward facing dog. Inhale, the other leg comes up into a one-legged dog in this position. And we lower down. Hold this position for a moment and breathe. Notice how your hands are stable and supported. I'm going to invite you to walk your hands forward walk your feet forward in the direction of your hands. You got it. And now you have some position choices here. You could hold this position called forward bend, but we still haven't really stood, have we? And then step back with your right foot and hold that position. Step back with the left foot into plank position. Take the knees to the floor and continue any kind of vinyasa we just did, using the forward bend as a part of the sun salutation, but it's a whole floor-based salutation because we didn't stand. There's nothing wrong with standing. I just give you some examples of some populations for whom just beginning, standing wouldn't be appropriate. Now to finish this, Manuel, I'm going to invite you to bring your knees under the chest to hero. Grab your glutes and have a sit, and thumbs to the heart space, just as we did in the very beginning when we came out of corpse, just to signal that the fact that the morning phase is now transitioning into the midday or noon phase where we will proceed standing. Many options to get standing. The first way I'm going to give you is to take your hands forward. And then we want to try a downward facing dog. So inhale into a downward facing dog. He's stepping back with the feet. His just wrists or ankles are neutral. Lifting up and walk your feet, this time in the direction of the hands into forward as we did before. Monkey pose or the spine preparation, long and strong spine. Then keeping your spine nice and tall, inhale into standing mountain. Nice and tall and standing mountain, getting ready for the finger to big toe pose. Let's use this as your supporting knee. I'm going to come to this side so you can feel like you have me on this side if you need it. We're going to reach under the leg, whatever's available to you. No have to, no should. You just want to find the intrinsic muscles of the stabilizing your left. Now we can reach for the big toe if you want to. I'm over here, and now you can reach forward in the sagittal plane or open up the hips. I'm always here if you need me, out to one side. So we reach out from the finger to big toe, open up the leg just a little bit. This arm could reach up, it could touch me, it could be on your side, lower down, out of the finger to big toe posture. From that, we're going to spread by walk, crawl, or jumping the feet to get ready for a triangle. Because we started to this side, let's continue. Notice how his feet are almost perpendicular to each other. Here's a little additional fine-tuning tip. I'm going to jump down to the floor and draw your attention to an imaginary line. Check this out. From this heel all the way to this heel, there's an imaginary line. So you know your feet are still lined up appropriately if you've got an internal rotation of the inferior or back leg, but the heels on an imaginary line would still line up. Let's try a triangle pose. Reach a few times to me to warm up that upper body mobility compared to the lower body stability. On this one, we're going to hinge forward, and as a feather, we float the left hand down. The top hand comes up to your triangle. The next vinyasa I'll give you, you could hold your participants as long as he or she would need in this posture, is to bring your hand by your side And let's add now a full facing the floor in table pose. So you're going to hinge forward, hands parallel, perfect, and now continue rotating toward a reverse or revolving triangle. The front hand goes to the floor and the back hand lifts up, trying not to touch the teacher. That was awesome. And then opening up the heart, facing away. Once again, separating lateral flexion and rotation. Now we're going to have the position called nose to knee, or the extended sideways. So we're going to come parallel. Your hands can come to the legs or behind you as you choose, lifting up. Notice how he's going to have his hands touch here, spinal integrity here. The distance to go from the nose to the knee is not very much, and gently he lets his spine flex so the spinal erectors release very eccentrically as he gets towards that floor. Coming out of it, he could use his hands or not, extend into a neutral table. Notice how his hips, shoulders parallel to the edge of the mat, navel squeezing in, and then inhale out of that pose. Slowly inhaling towards extension with or without hands. Lifting up. From here, we're in ideal position to try the runner's lunge. He's going to take his hands to a position that makes him feel comfortable. Could be towards the front leg as the back foot starts to turn and the knee stays off of the floor and gets a deep stretch into his left or the right as you're facing him. He can keep his hands on the floor. Deep intrinsic muscles of that non-supported hip are opening up in the runners. Legs spread wide is next. Extend up, and we're going to turn towards our friend watching. So lift your body up, Manuel. You extend that front knee, coming up position, and then the feet turn and reposition so everything faces us as we have everything face you. And now from this position, we get into our forward bend. Two ways. First with extension, because we always teach in something that's really challenging, the A level first. Hands to the knees, and this may be where you stop in a supported extension position. However, he can go farther and trace his hands down the legs and take the head in the direction of the floor. Now your nose is looking towards the wall behind you, checking out our water fountain and bamboo sticks. The navel is contracting in and the pelvic floor is engaged. So I like to use the rhyme once in a while in Hatha Yoga. Activate your core, engage your pelvic floor, breathe into it a little more. How do we come out of it now? We slide the hands up towards the knees, extend into a table posture, and then from here, actively, concentrically coming up with those spinal extensors, hamstrings and glutes up into active hip extension in our wide leg spread pose, or leg spread wide pose. From here, we're just going to do everything on the other side. Walk, crawl, or jump the feet together. And we get ready for one of Manuel's favorite postures, the hand to big toe balance posture. So now your left is going to come up and you're going to hold behind that foot or behind the leg and just find that stability and balance. I'm here for you if you need me. Reach your hand for the leg. It's always same side hand to leg because the contralateral or non-supported hand ideally in the B level actually goes up to sky. Once again, there is no have to or should. Then when you're ready, when that's available to you, you extend that knee as your hamstring flexibility allows. And the opposite hand goes up, and then you're going to try to open up the hip if you need to. Just try it one more time if you want to. You can always do it in an easy progression of just holding on to me. I'll take my hand away from your hip. Holding onto the big toe, leg goes out, and you can also open up the hip. Easy to do? Not really. So remembering you always want to teach with your classes and clients the regression version. Coming out of it slowly, we have 3 versions of triangle next. We have triangle, then we have revolving triangle, and then extended sideways. So walk, crawl, or jump the legs to a wide position, and everything angles towards the right side as you see it. And the front knee remains extended. A few times I'm going to invite you to separate the upper body from the lower body, practicing the upper body mobility, so crucial and important to prepare this area, right? And when you're ready, we float down in front of, behind, or next to the lower ankle, and the top thumb lines up with the mouth, and notice how he is long and parallel to the floor facing you. 3 triangles again in the body. We can spot them, or we can actually point them out very easily. From here, we're going to get into our revolving triangle. triangle. And one way to do it is bring your hand to your hip. Other hand slowly can touch the leg or not. Come up, be parallel to the floor, which prepares you later for your extended sideways. And now while you're still in flexion, revolve towards me, and then you'll lift the top hand as you come into the air. Wonderful. Thumb lines up over the mouth, chest towards me in the revolving or resisted triangle. What's next is we're going to do the extended sideways. So this hand comes to the hip. It can touch the hand behind. Any mudra that works for you. Remember, we always showed you that you can touch the leg. He's showing you the Namaste mudra, and his spine is parallel. Now, with eccentric control, he slowly lowers the nose towards the knee. If he touches the knee, good for him. If the knee doesn't touch the knee, good for him. But notice how everything is in alignment of hips and shoulders and front toe to the edge of his mat. Coming out of the pose, slowly lift up into extension, or use the hands. It's between him and his hands. And then on your spinal health, you lift up into extension, and coming out of that pose from your extended sideways, slowly lift it up. And now we get ready for the runner's lunge. So we still keep the hips here. The back knee is going to turn in. The ankle turns in. Seeing this from the side is really important to notice how his hands are by his feet, and he's pushing the hip forward with the back knee off of the floor. Options from here to get standing. Hands can come to the front thigh. Lift the hips and extend the spine, and then push up with the front knee as we turn to get ready for Manuel's favorite pose, legs spread wide. You're going to face us, turn the feet forward, standing long, and the knees are really extended. Notice how he's going to show you this in a tabletop position. Always working on the A level first, and then as he's ready, he's going to go down and touch the ankles. Head towards the floor, the spine's engaged. Notice his upper body is very close to the thighs or lower body, breathing intrinsically here. And then slowly the hands come up towards the knees, lifting up into extension, paying attention to all our AFAA guidelines on what we want to do for spinal health. Hands can come up towards the knees, Manuel, and let's come out of the posture. Hands come up, we extend the spine. Beautiful. And now slowly up. I thought maybe you wanted to stay there longer. And we come out of legs spread wide. Was that challenging section? Absolutely, right? And that concludes the midday section. As the sun starts to go through the afternoon, we walk, crawl, or jump the feet together for the afternoon of floor work and deep, intense hip opening and other types of isometric flexibility. Staff pose is next. So to get to the floor, I'm going to invite you to try many options. This is just one. I'm going to invite you to get into hero pose. So we take your left leg back and we come into this position. The right knee comes down. Grab your glutes and sit. Take your hands behind you onto the mat, lift the hips, and then take the legs forward, and you are already into the staff pose. So now I'm going to sit here and facilitate this verbally. Let's get into the upper body stability. Ears over shoulders over hips. So many people think that this is about the lower back opening, and it is not. It's not about ego or how much you can go forward. That's another posture called forward bending, which is the next posture. In staff, you think of the letter, L for Lawrence, keeping a nice tall extension of head to heels and hips to heels, head to hips, hips to heels, and a couple things to think about. Stability, upper body, ears, shoulders, hips. Mobility, the backs of the knees push into the floor. So if I gave you a raw P under your right knee and a raw P under your left knee, push down and make me some split Ps. Now what's going to happen with your pedicure? Go ahead and dorsiflex so mindfully that the toes come towards the nose. You'll know you're doing it appropriately probably if your Achilles come off of the floor. So you've got the toes to the nose, dorsiflexing, getting into the gastrocnemius. You've got the knees pushing down, actively working the inferior portion of the thighs and the quadriceps, and then you've got the spine engaged in active extension. The invitation is angle your body forward, try to touch my hand without flexing. As soon as you decrease the space between the ribs and the hips, that's another flexion, another yoga posture called Hunchasana. We're not doing that one today. You want to keep your whole body long and strong, the lower body stable, stability of the upper body, mobility of the lower body. We're feeling this in the hamstrings, right? Here's how you can make it easier. So many people think if you want to make it easier, flex both knees, right? But then you're defeating the purpose. Manuel's going to show you how he's going to flex one knee. Why is this an effective regression or an A-level approach of the pose? Because you're getting the purpose on one leg, but you're not having to fight for it through the whole body. So a single knee flexion is sort of the gray area of staff. From staff, we're going to move into the forward bend. Flex the other knee so both knees are flexed, please. And I'm going to invite you to take your hands to the sides of the legs and trace them down forward all the way to the bottoms of your feet. If you hold the ankles, good for you. If you can get your hands around the bottom of the feet, good for you. And bring your chest to your thighs. Now some things to think about. Relax the face, relax the neck, relax the back teeth. No TMJ or jaw, temporal mandibular joint tension. Relax the thoughts so that as you exhale, draw the navel in, you can hinge forward a little bit, and then try to extend the knees a little flatter. You can put the backs of the knees on the floor if in that position your chest is still touching your thighs. I don't get there. Manuel will. It's up to you to decide how far your forward bending is possible. Not tension here, but intention in the thoracoscapular area, and then in the lower back, the lumbothoracic area, you want to have a feeling of the lengthening of flexibility and still in the hamstring. And that's the intense forward bend. Before we come out and get into the hips, a butterfly, we're going to come out of this very slowly. Notice how he's tracing the legs down and he's pushing the hands under the legs, slowly coming up, avoiding that potential unsupported forward flexion. Now I'm going to invite you to scoot your glutes forward a little bit so we can try the butterfly facing forward, but you stay completely on these mats. Wonderful. Now the purpose of butterfly is to have upper body stability. Again, lower body hip opening. Notice how he's separating the gluteus maximus from the side to help you get into a muscular lengthening. We sit on the bone, not on the muscle. If you're trying to stretch a muscle, why would you limit that by sitting on it? Thumbs go in between the feet, and we just breathe here into a seated stability butterfly. That's the A, or approach level. The B, or the deeper progression of that, is to flex the spine. It's safe because your hands are already supporting you. Inching the hands forward around the pedicure, trying to get the forehead towards the hands. That's sort of the platonic goal, but if your head doesn't touch the feet, good for you. If you get the head towards the feet, good for you. Once again, stretching in that whole back. We did a forward bending pose with the knees in extension. Now we have a forward bending pose with the knees in flexion to open up the hips. We call this the butterfly, and we're breathing in this position. After this, we'll get the spine into extension and massage it. So slowly, let's show how we can come out of the bound butterfly or the flexion butterfly. Slowly extend up. The hands are still on the feet or touching some part of the body as we lift up into extension. And now the most wonderful part of this section is you get to massage your spine. So bring the knees together, bring them up together, and then slowly I'm going to let you round down the spine vertebra by vertebra as we get ready for something called the knee stirs. And we've already addressed this together when we've analyzed our postures. So your right hand is going to hold behind you, one knee, and the other hand's going to hold you behind you, the other knee. Open up the knees hip distance apart or a little bit wider. Lift the tailbone off the floor as if you were going to do a reverse crunch, and how about 3 circles in one direction? And then 3 circles in another direction. The whole upper body is your S in stability, and the lower body in the transverse plane is your mobility. There's no goal. If some people in the class are moving quickly, it's not wrong or right. It's how stable their core remains, right? And then try that a few more times in one direction and a few more times in the other direction as we get ready to try the next posture, which is a warm-up of 2 integral core stabilizing postures. The bound bridge, or the bridge, shoulder bridge, and then the shoulder stand. And for these, for illustrative, instructional purposes, imagine that we stopped Manuel here and we would continue the experience. But a quick pause. Go ahead and roll 3 times and come to a sitting position, Manuel. 2, exhale, 3, and I'd like you to turn and face that way, and we're going to continue this way so you all get to see a little bit better. So you were just doing your knee stirs. Take your glutes a little bit farther down that way, lower down, hands under the legs, open up, head is on the floor. Maybe scoot that way so your head is a little bit more on the mat. Beautiful, thank you. Hold behind the knees and up, and try the knee stirs again. And we continue where we just paused. I just reoriented him so you could see him better from the frontal plane. We're going to try 2 postures. There are the bridge and all the variations that you have in the manual of bridge, and then the whole shoulder stand, half shoulder stand, and I'll give you a little glimpse of the plow. To get ready for the shoulder stand, I always recommend the bridge because it's what I call the poor man's or poor woman's shoulder stand. A lot of people are daunted by the shoulder stand and the plow, but the bridge gives you so many of the similar benefits. We lower the feet to the floor. How do you know if your knees are flexed appropriately? If you take your hands at your side and wiggle your fingers, if you could almost touch your feet and your Achilles, you know that you have your knees flexed appropriately. I'm not saying it's a must, I'm saying it's a general guideline. If your feet are so far out that you can't wiggle your fingers and know that your ankles are almost there, you're not going to be safely able to lift your hips. So your feet are in, and how do you want to spread your feet? You want your feet the distance of the knees. The progression would be to bring the big toes touching and the ankles together, because then your inner thigh adductor muscles have to work. Let's go with the A level or the approach and have the knees the distance of the hips for this. So I don't have anything touching. If someone had a difficulty with this, and here's a common misalignment, they'll touch their feet together and splay their knees. You want to make sure whatever decision you have at the start of your bridge is the decision you have at the end of your bridge. Easiest level, palms are down, because you can push down and get some upper body support. Progression, supinate or turn the palms up. Turn the palms up so that you can't push down as much into the floor and cheat. Get ready with your ujjayi breath, and then when you feel comfortable, extend the hips into the sky without opening up the knees. Keep the knees a little bit closer together. Bring the knees a wonderful extension and adduction. So now you have the bridge that's appropriate for most individuals. Go ahead and turn the palms face down so you go back to the easier level, and notice how from knees to hips to shoulders, he has one long extended line. I know he wants to stay here a long time, but I'm going to move on just to show you some more options. In your notes, you have the shoulder bridge or shoulder bound bridge. Manuel's going to show you how you can actually walk your feet in if you need to. Scoot one shoulder blade under you, the other shoulder blade onto you, and put more weight onto the back parts of your deltoids and scapula, and then shake hands with yourself. You don't have to. You could clasp the hands together or keep the hands where they were, palms down, but the goal is now you're on the shoulders, making the shoulders integral, not twisting the head side to side, because it's really very, very gently stabilizing the whole body, and your feet are very, very gently stabilizing the whole body. If you see your client's knees splay out, invite them. Bring your knees closer together. Give them the ball to keep there, because if it goes rolling, they know they've lost that core stability. So the knees stay a little bit closer together, and the hips stay high. Let's separate the feet a little bit. Let's separate the hands and come out of that shoulder bridge, lower down, and find yourself once again, to use the words of the book, imprinted of the shoulder area into the mat, as we get ready to move on to the next posture called the shoulder stand or the half shoulder stand. For the person who can't get all the way up with the lower body core, for the person who has shoulder or neck issues, we're going to invite that person just to stay in bridge, because it gives you very similar benefits. Are you ready for shoulder stand? I'm going to invite you to lift up into your bridge, or stay able to bring one knee in and lower, other knee in, and when you're ready, rock a little bit using your core training, and then bring your knees up and over and support yourself with your hands. This is a position not in our book, but it's called the candle, which is the preparation of the half shoulder stand. Now, the half shoulder stand is lifting up, extending the knees so the pedicure lines up with the nose. Can you see how Manuel's hips are flexed? That's the half shoulder stand, and we call it a half shoulder stand because it's not fully vertical. Because the toes line up with the eyes, this means you haven't gone too far. If you have the pedicure go past the eyes, the potential for falling is longer or larger. How do we go from the half shoulder stand to the full shoulder stand? Walk the hands towards the body, take the feet all the way into the air. So actually the hands walk up the spine. It feels when you're doing it like down the spine. And now notice the full extension of his body. His elbows could scoot a little bit closer to each other, and he has one long line. The pedicures don't have to line up with the eyes now, because you have one long tall spine of your body in this position. Very challenging, and it's a balance pose, but still all the pressure on the shoulders and neck, which is why we've given the preparation phase and the option regression of holding the shoulder bridge first. What could we do from this pose? We could hold it, we could meditate, we could try the cooling breath, because it really warms you up, but we're going to get out of it. Let's flex the knees down into that candle position, and then scissor the legs, which means with using your core, navel in, pelvic floor engaged, we want to touch down like this, finishing the way we began, in a bridge. huge. The last thing we'll do is take the hands and unclasp and lower down to the floor. The difference between half shoulder stand and full shoulder stand is not huge, except half shoulder stand keeps people balanced a little bit better because the toes line up with the face and there's less chance for people just to go the other direction and fall. From this position, let's just give an example of a full plow of how I would introduce this for my classes that have been practicing Hatha Yoga with me for months and months and really get up into a full shoulder stand. They don't need the bridge preparation and they're ready to move on. Can I invite you to scoot down a little bit more? The whole body, wonderful, just so that when we're ready, we can actually try to keep more of our body on the mat. Wonderful. Now let's bring the body up into the half shoulder stand by rocking the knees up and then catch yourself. That's the way that Manuel likes to do it. Holding the hands on the kidneys, candle pose, lifting up, coming out of a full or half shoulder stand, flexing back into candle. We scissor the legs again, and one knee extends, then the other knee extends, and here we are in plow. The options are to hold the kidney area or place the hands flat against the floor. Breathing deeply in Ujjayi keeps the glottis open because this area closes off a lot of that area, and we want to make sure that the breath stays connected to the life force. Core connection, getting some hamstring benefits, the inversion opening up latent energy through the sushumna. Why do we go upside down in Hatha Yoga? We believe it improves longevity, helps decrease the signs of aging, helps balance the brain and craniosacral fluid, and finally, if you change the way that you see things, the things you see will change. Slowly, we flex one knee, and then we flex the other knee, and we're slowly coming back to candle, bringing the hands back to the legs, scissoring the legs going forward. It's very, very slowly. And we're going to lower the spine and give ourselves a treat. It's called the dead bug. Bringing one knee into the chest, holding it on the inner thigh or behind, holding the other thigh on the inner thigh or behind. We are going to open up the legs and just breathe here. We don't have to move and massage. That's called the knee stirs. The progression of this is to reach the right hand for the right big toe inside the leg, and the other side reaches simultaneously, and we breathe. You may know this pose is called the happy baby. It helps relax the spine. It helps relax the cervical spine after all the inversion and weight bearing, helps decrease all the pressure from the intra-abdominal forces that have been taking place to support you in the inversion upside down, and the knees lower towards the floor every time we exhale and sink. Some people combine the dead bug with the knee stirs, and they're both wonderful massagers for the whole lumbar area of the spine as well as the kidneys. Now from out of here, we get ready for the half fish, and we will finish our whole afternoon series. We're going to bring the knees a little bit closer to each other and let go and slide the hands down the legs, feet to the floor, and scoot yourself back up a little bit as we get ready. You can round forward to pull yourself back onto the mat for illustrative purposes, so he's more in the center so you can all see. Wonderful. You came back down. Wonderful. So let's take the hands under the glutes, palms up, as your book says. Some people like to have the palms down. It's not a must that's really going to put too much pressure on the shoulder either way, so they're both personal preference. Notice how the knees are extended in our version in this course of half fish. The easiest way is to come up, push the elbows into the floor and come up to a position where you actually could be gazing at television and watching a TV show in front of you. Notice, lift the chin just a little bit more. The chest is open, the heart space is open, core connection. This is the A level or approach level of your half fish. What's the second level? We're going to keep the feet on the floor. We're going to extend the cervical spine, looking at not the ceiling but the space behind you. Walk the elbows out to the side and place the head on the floor. Of course, if you have cervical spine issues or any of the contraindications we give you throughout the manual for reasons why we should not do an inversion, put the head below the heart, this is contraindicated for that. But with natural extension of the spine, it's a back bend. It's opening up. It's invigorating and opens up all blocked energy of the sushumna. I should be able to put my hand right under the body to the other side and come back, and I could. Key importance here. How do you come out of fish? You could flex the knees to give your spine a little bit more support and keep them flat on the floor. The very first thing you do before you extend the spine is lift the head off the floor, then tuck the chin into the chest, and then lower back down. So you come neutral and then go to the floor. You don't slide the head against the mat or twist the head on the mat. That's all outlined for you in the manual of things not to do. So you extend the spine and you keep it neutral, the spine. And then you're back in this position. You could go ahead and lay out, turn the palms up, and you're in which posture? You are now in the corpse posture, or savasana, or the meditation posture, or the contemplative posture, and give your classes or clients as much time as they would need to be in this posture. Winding up the second experience of together, our yoga work, we call this our second experience. Thank you for joining this. In just a moment, we're going to move on to analyzing more of our postures together. How do you feel from that, Manuel?
Absolutely fine.
It was challenging, right? Holding those postures as you're demonstrating to instructors. A lot of times in fitness, people are trying to hold postures for a long time, and I think what we do in America is so short compared to what we do in India. 3 inches or 3 minutes of a triangle to one side versus 3 minutes to triangle of another side. How could we get our clients off of corpse? Some instructors say, here's your meditation, stay here, and then they finish class and leave. Or they cue them ways to get out of it, or they read them a guided meditation, or they play a special song, or they have people focus on a traditional movement. What I want you to do is just wiggle your fingers and toes. Bring your knees into your chest. How about roll, I don't know, like maybe a ball 3 times, and then when you finish, and sit up. Cross-legged and face our friends who are watching you that want to see that joy and expression that comes from your face after practicing a demonstrative class number 2 in our Hatha Sunrise Hatha Yoga approach. And we say thank you for joining us. Thumbs to the heart. Namaste. I'm going to step over and get, Manuel, the notes that we're going to use to continue with another section of our analyzing of postures. Can I get you to come to the center of the mat to hero pose, holding your glutes sitting on your ankles, please? For those of us following along who just finished with the camel of number 28, we're picking up in which posture? Hero, correct? We're in number 29, Virasana or Virasana. If you looked at this from the side, you would see that he looks like the letter Z of the Latin alphabet. Can I have you flip around and just show them what it looks like from the side? Facing me, please. Grabbing the glutes automatically and sitting down. The reason that it's important, Z is often an animal, or it's often a symbol, it's often a letter that we use for depicting enlightenment, the hero animal or the hero person or the hero Z struck by wisdom and meditation. Zen masters meditate in this posture for days without even taking bathroom breaks. I can manage about 3 minutes myself, but that's probably too much information for you. The regression for this with those who have knee issues is to come up all the way into high kneeling. So you're in a kneeling position, in a knees hip distance apart, and your ankles are neutral. You could also pad the heels. Something that you see in the book in the B level or the basic level is to keep the knees together, separate the ankles, and try to place the glutes on the floor. We're only going to suggest that to people who have absolutely no issues with knees, no issues with ankles, and really have the flexibility to hyperflex the knees and place the glutes on the floor. We recommend for most group fitness settings the A version and the M version depicted in this manual, because you don't want to put any torque or tension on the medial ligaments of the knee, and you don't have to stretch the feet any deeper by telling people you have to put the glutes onto the floor. It's a wonderful posture and it's a wonderful progression, but as we said before, not all progressions are for all people. Let's go grab your glutes and come back down into the hero pose. It's a wonderful transition. We've shown you a regression. Another level A addition you could do is take the mat in front of you and fold it up, but we don't need to show you that because we've shown it to you already in the camel pose. The important thing here is what could happen with the hands. They could be palms down to keep heat in. If it's towards the end of the class, the palms could be on your thighs facing forward, or on the thighs face up to let energy go and relax that way, and that helps cool down. With the Sitali breath, helps you actually use the hero pose as towards the end of your afternoon experience to sort of cool down. Another thing you might want to do is incorporate this in the warm-up as we showed you in our floor-based sun salutation, and you can always pad the space between the glutes and the heels. That concludes the hero pose. As we move on to the next pose called the seated spine twist, I'm going to invite you to turn and face the friends who are watching now, Manuel, because I think it's best seen from the front. Starting with the regression, pick one leg and go ahead and extend it all the way out. and then cross the other foot over the thigh. So as you see it, Manuel's left is out, and he's crossing with his right. Foot to the floor or the side of the foot to the floor. It doesn't have to be either or, as long as there's no torque on the ankle. For those of you who have gone through the AFAA primary certification, you know it's always an area that we want to pay particular attention to in all postures. Notice how he's pulling on the knee now, using the hand, using the elbow, using that wrapping binding technique, not only to look at me, but to look at past me. Common misalignments. People find tension in the core, the thoracic spine, and they stop. Or if we invite them to tilt a little bit more, they flex the spine because ego takes over. Remember this, we never sacrifice range of motion for the purpose of alignment. So lift the chin, and wherever you stop is wherever you stop. But I'm going to ask Manuel a question. Could you just take your spine, the cervical spine, the upper neck, and rotate a few more inches over your left shoulder? And he does. So when you ask your clients who are so used to thinking of their body in terms of one unit, could you separate the lower body? Could you turn a little bit more with the heart? And they do. Could you raise the chin to be integrally safe and rotate the cervical spine a little bit more? They can. The question is, where does the spine have most rotational ability? And the answer is cervical spine. You just proved it to them. The left hand can pull a little bit. The right hand can pull a little bit. External active stimuli can help you get a little bit deeper into the pose, as long as you're doing any shrugging. That's another yoga posture called Shrugasana. We're not going to recommend that as these 40. So we lift the chin. If we went into it very, very slowly, how are we going to come out of it? Very, very slowly. Turn, take a few breaths. Turn, take a few breaths, turn, take a few breaths, and very slowly unhinge. Slowly coming around, facing us as we face them. Now let's do the other side with the progression. So now your left is extended, and we're going to put the other foot on the other side, and now the front knee is going to engage in flexion. We reposition the body. The side of the ankle can be on the floor. The foot can be on the floor, as long as there are no wrinkles and you don't see any torque or tension. And now, because his lower body is in something we sometimes refer to in Hatha Yoga, not part of this course, as the seat of the bull, B-U-L-L, or the male cow, we extend the spine, look over one shoulder, and we engage in a deeper, deeper rotation, using the hand behind us, the hand in front, and actually helping to pull ourselves into a little bit deeper transverse plane rotation. Raising the chin a little bit, could you rotate a little bit deeper? And he does. It's magic how if you will it, it will happen. Because in Hatha Yoga, the brain conceives it, the heart believes it, and eventually the body will achieve it. Slowly extend the spine and gently lift and untwist. We want to get into a pose gently, and we want to come out of a pose gently. Turning back towards our friends who are watching, and then we could take both hands behind you and lower that leg. You put your hands on the floor and sit cross-legged. That concludes the seated spine twist. Notice in the notes, as well as we remind you, that rotational, deep, intense stretches are best done when the rest of the spine has been warmed up first. Some lateral flexion, some active extension past neutral, then engage in rotation. Transverse plane is where a lot of people get injured, right? But when the spine is prepared from all that dynamic and rhythmic preparatory limbering, so the consequential transverse plane really produces more benefits than risks. From 30, we move on to the staff pose, which we're going to address with separating the glutes out from the back. The staff pose is long and strong. We've addressed this in the forward bend, where the toes to the nose, backs of the knees into the floor, and long and strong spine. We've already addressed this. We have it here as number 30, and we move on to the seated forward bend. We've already addressed that, where we wrap the hands around the forward, and we come back up. From the forward bend, we've reviewed the butterfly. We move on to the boat pose. For the boat pose, we're going to flex the knees and bring them in towards the core. Dorsiflex the ankles so the toes come to the nose. Hands are behind us and extend the spine. Wonderful. Now the hands are going to reach forward. One hand is forward and the other hand is forward. This is okay if your clients do not bring the ribs in the direction of the hips and start to flex. Super important here. Why is this important? Because if you start to flex, you're going out of the purpose of the pose, which is maintaining spinal neutral, extension of your breakfast, lunch, and dinner vertebrae, right? The cervical, the thoracic, and the evening dinner. So what we're going to do in the lumbar is bring the knees a little bit closer together, because whatever he chooses to start with between ankles and knees is what we want to maintain during the posture. How can we do some other progressions? Bring your hands to me so they're parallel to the floor. That's a regression. It's less intense because you're not taking your body away from gravity where you have to fight longer to hold it. I'm going to invite you to take your hands behind you so you get to get additional posterior passive support while we work on challenging the lower legs. Could you bring your knees to my hands? Wonderful. And then the other one, and bring your feet to my hands, imagining that the lower bones of the lower legs, the tibia and fibula, are parallel to the floor. I'd like to place a basketball right here and notice that it's parallel. The progression here would be extend one knee, keeping the knees pretty close together, extending one knee. If I see that he has spine integrity, really starts with design integrity, I might have him do it, as you see in the book, in letter B, the full progression, and then one hand can come forward and the other hand come forward towards the sky, and he is in a full letter V. Can you take your hands to the floor? We'll show you this from the side in a minute, and then slowly flex one knee to the floor and the other knee to the floor and push yourself up. At no time did Manuel ever bring the ribs in the direction of the hips and flex the spine. Then you know if your clients are going too far. Thank you, Manuel. So now let's show the regression, the easy way to get into the pose. Flex the knees. Wonderful. And I draw your attention to this letter. As you flex the elbows, bend the elbows leaning back, here's the letter V. Can you see from ears to hips and hips to knees? One long letter V. We want to make sure that this never changes no matter what we do distally, because proximally we have core integration. So I'm going to invite you to take one hand parallel. Here's another variation, parallel to the floor, and take the opposite leg and bring the toes to my hand. Wonderful. No collapsing. Design integrity. He has it. Let's go back to this hand. See if he lifts it up without flexing. Of course. The other knee comes up to my hand, and if you want, excuse me, and if you want to extend, deep, deep boat. Look at that. Nice and design integrity, nice and tall. Excuse me, I get so excited when I see a deep, deep boat. Go ahead and flex your knees back to my hands. One hand goes to the floor. The other contralateral heel goes to the floor. Wonderful. And then heel, and then the hands come back behind you and push yourself back up. You know your clients are appropriate and ready for that if they get choked up when they watch your clients move like I did. Or you know if your clients are ready for that if you notice that they're not flexing. As soon as a client brings a rib in the direction of the hip, as small as it could be, it just means you've gone to a progression because of ego and you're dangling on the lumbar vertebrae. One of the top 3 ways to bulge, herniate, or deviate a lumbar disc. And we want to always go for what? The B of benefits over the R of risks. That's so important in the boat pose. Why I think the boat pose is so really creative and it's so integral as a transition and core training strategy. Listen to this, my friends. You are going to tell your clients as a teaser, I'm going to balance your upper body muscles and your lower body muscles, and I'm going to balance the whole body on the back of your butt, on the ischial tuberosities. As soon as you got that going on with your clients, all of a sudden you get this intense energy for them to be able to look you in the eye and say, I'm okay, I'm going to bring the knees up, and I'm going to flex the elbows back, come back into that preparation stage, and they're already in the balance preparation of the boat. Why do we call it a boat? Navasan, as you'll notice we call it in Sanskrit, is also translated as a scale, because you're balancing your upper body and you're balancing the lower body as a scale on the posterior section of those hip bones, the ischial tuberosity. We also call it a boat because you're the bow of a boat, looks like this, a letter V going through the water. So if you bring your knees together, squeeze my finger, bring your knees to my hand, point the toes, and then lift the ankles to my hands. Look at this. He is the stern of the boat guiding forward through. Then he could take one hand forward or the other hand forward or his hands up here, but he keeps that design integrity, and he is a boat guiding through, gliding through, and sliding through the water. Hands come to the floor. And that finishes the boat pose, which in our manual is pose number 34. Pose number 35 is our shoulder bridge, and let's review what we've addressed already in our class number 2, our second class. To set up, you want the feet hip distance apart or knees together and feet together to challenge the adductors. That's a progression. The hands are at the side, palms down or palms up, and before we go into the shoulder bridge, we try the regular bridge. On an inhalation, we lift the hips into the sky so that from the knees to the hips to the shoulders, we have one long line of extension. Breathing here is an appropriate progression. In Ujjayi, we could also make it a cooling breath. The progression is to scoot one shoulder under the body, the other shoulder under the body, coming on to the back parts of the deltoids and the shoulder blades. In addition to squeezing the deltoids together, notice what Manuel's doing by clasping the hands together. Progression could be also to bring the knees and ankles closer together, decreasing the base of support, further activating the intrinsic adductors of the legs. How could we progress this? You could spend time here. You could take the hands apart, lower the hips, and move into some of the other postures that we did in the class, like the half shoulder stand, the full shoulder stand, and the plow. Coming out of the bridge, we're here. Some benefits of bridge. Not only does it work as an inversion, because it does put the head below the heart, but you absolutely stimulate metabolism. You absolutely can help digestion, and it's organic, i.e. it helps organs benefit as well as stimulates sort of a biomechanical muscular response. What are those? You have activation of hip extension through the glutes and the hamstrings, correct? Because the glutes and hamstrings extend the hips against gravity. So shoulder and regular bridge are great examples of how to do an inversion. Put the body upside down, but stay with many contact points onto the floor. Head, neck, shoulders, feet, and even if you choose the easiest or regress inversion, our A approach level, palms down onto the floor for assisted support. That's the shoulder bridge, number 35. Number 36 is our knee stirs, really stimulating the lower lumbar spine, but it's a great core training exercise as well because it's so easily misunderstood and it's easy to misunderstand. I'm going to go back a little bit to give you some more range of motion and invite you to bring one knee over the chest, the other knee over the chest, and then hold notice behind the knees. Open the knees a little bit wider than shoulder distance if you want to gain more range of motion. Tilt the tailbone off of the mat if you can, and then come back neutral. Just so our friends can see the difference. You won't get as much ability to move if you have the spine completely in neutral. You are slightly flexing the inferior part, the lumbar spine. So we bring that tailbone off of the floor, and then we make some circles in one direction, minimizing upper body movement. Here is your stability. Head, neck, and shoulders glued, crazy glued, imprinted, cemented into the mat, and then he changes direction. We've already addressed in our analysis of using the AFAA 5 questions, so what you often see, we'll show you one more time. The heads come up, and you notice that people think it's about the bigger is better and range of motion. Those are whole different exercises which really transcend this course. This is upper body stability, lower body mobility, making knee stirs. The other option would be to increase the space between the legs, and that's more of a challenge because look at how now he really gets a lot more range of motion. However, we never sacrifice range of motion without understanding the stabilization techniques that have to take place first. That concludes knee stirs. Wonderful for warm-up, wonderful for transition in the sunset phase. And the feet go to the floor, and we rest. The next posture is number 37, the dead bug, and it's a wonderful relaxation for the lower spine after inversions, after bridges, after standing, after being even flexed in something like child. What we're going to do is bring the knees into the chest with the core muscles. We can assist with the hands on the hamstrings, and then we're going to reach for the big toe. If that's not available to you, you can also reach for just the ankle. So we're going to breathe here, widening the knees. Some people call the dead bug the happy baby. Some people just refer to it as the bug. I don't always in Hatha Yoga reference corpse or dead pose or dead bug because I want to keep it very happy in the positive realm. But yoga is very honest in saying that we are a part of life. You have a sunrise and we will have metaphorically a sunset. So whether you choose to call it the dead bug and use it a relaxation pose or call it the happy baby, Manuel, let's show the regression here where you just touch the ankles and you drop the hands for the people who can't quite get all the way to the big toe. Notice how by releasing the big toe, the ankles naturally plantar flex a little bit. That's cool for releasing here. And then you want to keep the pelvic floor engaged. Otherwise, there could be too many eliminations of what we call throughout the manual sort of releasing. And there are lots of ways that participants release. We want to release the tension of the lower back, but we don't want to release anything else in this posture. So contracting pelvic floor and navel squeezing in, contracting the glutes as well, all important in this, the dead bug posture. To get out of it, we can bring the knees a little bit closer together to support the spine and then scissor the legs one at a time, or if you have great core control, bilaterally lower the feet to the floor. This concludes the dead bug posture. Moving on to number 38, the plow pose, which we've already addressed. I'd like to just go over a few more common points that are commonly misunderstood. I'm going to invite you to scoot a little bit down this way, Manuel, so you slide your body forward by rocking it, and then scoot your glutes towards the edge of the mat, and then lower down. We've practiced bridge. We've practiced bound bridge or shoulder bridge, and Manuel has shown you how he's rocked a few times to get up to that position. Another way, I'm just going to invite him to show you that you can use some clients who don't have that core control to roll up and then stop, is try this. Lift up into bridge, keep the feet on the floor, lift up into bridge, and then raise the heels up and bring one knee in. Just bring one knee off the floor a little bit. Good. And then lower down. It's a great core training exercise to help people know how it will be one day to get up for half shoulder stand, to get up for plow by getting that ability to hold that position and then do it unilaterally. The progression here is take your hands under the lower back, sort of the kidney areas, and that allows you when you bring one knee up to bring it past the hips, and now try to hip up and hinge over and see if you can get the knees to candle position. We could lift up into half shoulder stand, but we're talking about the plow to get people into plow. Of course, they have no lower back, they have no neck and no shoulder issues. We don't go full force. Unilaterally, one ankle and one knee extend, the other ankle, knee, and extend. And in this course, we're not recommending walking out or lowering the hands or the legs. The hands can lower to the floor, but in a nice extension direction of the mat and the shoulders, and the feet don't spread. The feet stay here. To come out of the plow, we flex one knee, so we scissor, and then we use core control. Hands come back to the lower back. We do one knee in, and we take a pause here for core recruitment. Then we scissor the legs and come forward. We started in bridge, so keep the heels off the floor. Heels stay off the floor. This is exactly how we started. Now the hands come out, and we lower to the floor. So we've given you so far today a few different options for your classes and clients to try, that sort of plopping up or plopping down or using core muscles to get up, sometimes with momentum. That's an optional pose. That's why we have it with the asterisk. But this concludes the plow pose, number 38. Number 39 is the shoulder stand, which we've already addressed at length. The most important thing for your classes and clients to understand is they have no pre-existing issues why they shouldn't do an inversion, come up onto their head and neck or shoulders, and the difference between the half shoulder stand and the full. Let's show them one more time the variation differences, Manuel. So we're going to walk the knees up. I'll let you choose however you want to get up into the candle pose. Maybe the rocking this time, since we showed them the slow version last time. And we have the candle transition here. Notice how the elbows are very close together, hands on the lower back, and then we're going to lift up, pedicure and nose and eyes line up, half shoulder stand. The full shoulder stand would be to come all the way up into an extension pose, moving the hands, extending the hips with the glutes and hamstrings, upside down, come back into camel as we show you the candle, the M1 version as you see. Candle, C-A-N-D-L-E, and then of course you can even extend the knees just a little bit and pause, and that's a variation of candle as well, only so you can see me better. Just kidding, it's in your manual as M2. Slowly, let's go ahead and scissor the legs, trying to lower down without a plop because it's a core training exercise, and then taking the hands out and slowly lowering to the floor. That concludes the shoulder stand progressions and regressions. And for number 40, number half fish. Just to finish, The 3 versions, the last version is using a yoga block, and once again, we're not addressing props in this, but you wonderfully self-explained in the M version of your picture. We're coming up here, we're going to scoot back, and we're going to just watch TV with the hands under the glutes. Palms up, preferred, palms down, sometimes accessible. Hands on the glutes, no squeezing please. Legs are out, pushing the elbows down. We lift up and look forward. You can raise the chin a little bit because you're concentrating on that whole idea of spinal extension, lifting up. The second version is just add a little more cervical extension, pushing the abdominals in and raising the chest, top of the head to the floor. Without rotating the neck ever, how do we come out of this? Lift the head off the floor, slowly bring the chin into the chest, take the elbows out from the body, and then we lower down. Remember, extension first, lowering second, and here we are in corpse pose, appropriate for the afternoon last posture because that concludes the half fish, or posture number 40 of this, the last section where we absolutely talk about fine-tuning the Hatha Yoga poses of our sunrise Hatha Yoga.